Well, a lot of us try to succeed in some way, and we go out and we make a living, or we develop a family. We do something that we think is going to be our way of succeeding and producing something of value in this world. Well, when that doesn't produce the feelings that we thought it would, we go to a second mode of survival. We're not succeeding anymore, we're trying to survive. And we all pick different means to survive the pain and the emptiness that sometimes we experience when our dreams don't come true, or when things aren't exactly right, or we've had an abusive childhood. And all of us know that alcoholics drink to survive, that food addicts eat food to survive, and some of those are pretty negative and in the consequences. But there are a certain group of people that pick religion as an addiction, just as food or alcohol or drugs could be. The uniqueness of it is that it doesn't look bad, it looks good. And that makes it even tougher for people to confront and see that it's there. What it is essentially replacing your relationship with God with a religious practice, so that no longer are you praying to God, are you listening to God, are you studying God's Word, but you're going through rules, regulations, rituals. You become so religious, and you think that if I can just abide by a few more rules, I can just fit into a few more regulations, just do a few more of these rituals, that somehow I'm going to earn favor with God, or I'm going to make up for this terrible empty feeling. Well, like any addiction, it feels pretty good for a while, but it starts to fall away in its value and its meaning, and the person tries harder and tries harder, but produces less and less result. So just like a person who used to drink a can of beer drinks a case of beer, the person that just started with a little religious addiction, fairly soon their whole life is consumed by religion. Their relationships fall apart, they sacrifice their family and their friends, and they set up a wall between them and other people, a wall that looks like they've got it all together, no one else does. And these poor religious addicts, they feel like they're with the real thing, the true God, but all they are is participating in a religion that will get them nowhere. Many times religious addicts religiously abuse. I'll give you an example. I did a seminar in San Diego, and a mother told me that she felt so bad because her husband had been going into the room of their two daughters and telling them stories of teenagers that God had killed because they had disobeyed their parents. Now that's spiritual abuse. These kids are growing up certainly knowing about God. They even have a relationship with God. But their picture, the God that they understand, is a vindictive, angry, killing God. One of the neatest parts about the 12 steps in recovery from religious addiction is that, or any addiction, is that you come to the point of recovery no matter how you understand God. I know I understand God a lot differently than I did 15 years ago. It's not that we want to make God some doorknob or some nebulous thing. No, but it's that we don't have to have the perfect concept of God before we come to a point of recovery from this abuse. Another form of abuse is often when a pastor who thinks he's got a little more than other people, a little more gifted than other people, a heavier responsibility, when that pastor starts to manipulate the congregation. I did a seminar in Seattle, Washington, and there's a pastor up there who grew his church to 3,000 people. He said he had a vision from God that the man in a marriage should have a female spiritual guide outside the marriage, and the female should have a male spiritual guide outside the marriage. 3,000 people started to follow this practice. Well, within a year, as you can imagine, divorce was rampant in the church. After 2 years, there were 150 people left in that congregation of 3,000 people. Now, many of those went on to find healthy, balanced churches, but a lot of them turned away from the faith forever. They'll never come back. because this man abused them spiritually. Two ways that I think churches abuse people. One is that they punish people. You'll see folks going to a church, that pastor will come up with every negative slogan, every negative thing. People leave there feeling like a worm, like they're undeserving of God's love, and they'll walk out of that church and they'll say, wasn't that a great sermon today? Because they feel so guilty, they think they need to be beaten up or spanked. Well, the other way that spiritual abuse occurs is when pastors promise people things that can't be delivered. When they promise them, if you just give money, you're going to get wealthy. If you just have the real kind of faith, God will heal you 100% of the time. Or if you have enough faith, God will find you that perfect mate. And they hook people in with these promises that don't come true, but the people keep believing, keep hoping, keep trying, so that maybe their promise will come true someday. Now, the real good toxic faith church that hooks people in, the worse, is the one that punishes people and then also promises them things that they can't deliver. When you have that punishment and promise, when you've got that pain from disappointment and also from guilt, it tends to hook people into the religious addiction system, because that's probably what they were used to when they were kids. One of the joys of writing Toxic Faith has been getting phone calls from people who are outcasts. And I spend a lot of time trying to make these folks feel really good about what they've done. This is that rare individual in the midst of 10,000 people who have been led down some path that doesn't lead to God, or they're involved in an abusive church where maybe the leader is involved in multiple affairs and everybody's covering up for him. Or it seems like everybody's supposed to worship him rather than God. In the midst of all these people falling in line, the outcast has the sense, and hopefully it's because they're listening to the leading of God, they had the sense to say, you know what, this isn't for me. This is unhealthy. It doesn't feel right. It's not leading me to a better relationship with God, feeling better about myself. I feel worse about myself, and I feel more distant from God. So the outcast is willing to become an outcast, willing to suffer ridicule and abuse and slander from the people that stay in the system. So I really encourage people to be brave enough to be an outcast if you find yourself in a system that's abusive. If we had more people stepping up and becoming an outcast, we'd see healthier churches. A lot of folks say, well, I'm involved in an unhealthy church, I'm praying for this pastor. What they don't realize is every Sunday when you sit in that pew or in that chair, you're voting yes for that pastor. Your body is a vote. It's a confirmation that you believe in that person. And the only way that you'll exact change is when you no longer vote with your body. You go and attend another healthier church. When that congregation dies out or starts to go away, then hopefully people will say, hey, there really is something wrong here. We're losing very good and strong people.